Hey there, welcome back to Creepy Encounters. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the videos. Whenever I see a scary thread, it ends up being about ghosts and whatnot. That's not scary. I find real people more strange and eerie than the paranormal. What are your scariest encounters with real people? Part 2. When I was 18, I worked the evening shift at a convenience store. Over the previous 3 nights, 3 stores from the same chain had been held up at gunpoint in my small city, so my manager had basically been prepping me all week to get robbed. I was, understandably, on edge all night. I was down to the last few hours of my shift, and I was finally starting to calm down a little bit when a guy with his hat pulled down low walked in, came right up to the counter, and started reaching into the inside of his jacket and said, "You know those days when you should have just stayed home? I think this is one of them." Time was moving in slow motion at this point and my heart was beating out of my chest. After what felt like 10 minutes, the guy pulled his wallet out of his jacket and asked for a pack of cigarettes. Anticlimactic, but scary nonetheless. TL, dear, almost pooped my pants over a pack of cigarettes. My brother came into town on business and invited me to bar hop on his expense account. I let my wife know not to wait up and met up with him once I got off work. We spent the night going from bar to bar, catching up on what had been going on in our lives until the last bar closed, around 2 to 3 a.m. Then we stumbled back to his hotel room and passed out. I woke up the next morning around 7 a.m. and went home. My wife had already left, so I didn't see her. An hour or so later she called me and asked where I had gone so early that morning. I was confused cause I didn't get home until after she had left for work. I explained this to her and she got really scared. She explained that at around 12:30 to 1 a.m. she heard a key in the front door and the door opening. She sat up in bed and saw a male figure come in, who she assumed was me, and go into the living room. She assumed that I had just decided to sleep on the couch rather than come into the room and risk waking her up. So she just rolled over and went to sleep. A few hours later, around 5 to 6 a.m., she heard someone moving around downstairs again, and then the front door opened and she watched the person leave and heard the door lock. She thought I was heading out and just rolled back over to sleep again. We lived in a neighborhood of townhomes where every house looked the same, so we guessed someone just got the wrong house and had a key that was close enough to ours to work. Then woke up and realized they were in the wrong house and got the hell out. We called a locksmith and had the locks changed that day. TL/DR went out drinking with my brother and passed out at his hotel. That night my wife had an unexpected/unknown house guest barge in and sleep on our couch. This story is 100% true. I experienced it myself in the summer of 1991. When I was about 10 years old, I lived on Woodway Drive in the Fox Harbor Apartments in Paducah, Kentucky. If you look up the address, you will see some woods just to the north of the apartment complex. My friends and I played in those woods every day after school and all day on the weekends. Through the few years I lived there, we cleared a small area in the woods and created a fort from various things we got out of dumpsters. It was our own place that no one else knew about, and it was awesome. One day as we were walking to our fort, off in the distance we saw a man walking through the woods. He was walking parallel to us, but in the opposite direction, like cars traveling on a road, but with about 70 to 80 yards separating our paths. We stopped talking and stopped dead in our tracks when we saw him. We never saw anyone in the woods, especially not adults. When we stopped moving, he did too. He turned towards us and looked right at us. As I stared at him and was able to make out the details of what he looked like, I noticed that he was wearing what looked like a Halloween mask, a generic mask, not Michael Myers, and carrying an axe in his hands. We stood there in silence and motionless for what was probably about 10 seconds, he looking at us, and us looking at him. Then he started sprinting straight at us. We did the only thing we apparently thought to do, run straight to our fort. We were probably about 50 yards from the entrance to the fort, and in those 50 yards he gained a lot of ground on us. When we finally made it, he was upon us. All of my friends scurried up a tree and were screaming, but I was the last in line. By the time I could try and climb the tree, he was standing right there by us. He was screaming like a lunatic and waving the axe in the air. I was scared, had no idea what was going on, and my mind was blank on what I should do. I grabbed a large stick and took a nice big baseball bat swing and cracked him on the face with it. He stumbled back a bit, moaned, and took the mask off. I recognized the face. It was the landlord and manager of the apartment complex. A man who was probably about 50 years old. He wanted to play a joke on us and thought this was the most appropriate thing to do. He was a fucking psycho. TL/DR was chased by a man with a mask and an axe through the woods. I fought back. It was all a joke that we didn't find funny. When I was quite young, I was out at the park walking my dog, German Shepherd, when I realized it was getting quite late and I was the only one left in the park. A man dressed in a dark hooded top and a black scarf covering his face jumped the fence that leads into the alleyway behind the park and started marching towards me, but he hadn't spotted my dog, who was off sniffing around or doing whatever dogs do. My dog got between us though, and there was a kind of standoff for a while. My dog was really tense and growling with his hackles raised, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if my dog was going to attack the man, so I just kind of froze. After a while the man backed away, jumped back over the fence and ran away down the alley. I put my dog back on his lead and went home, but he was still tense the whole way back. I was a little freaked out, but perhaps not as afraid as I should have been, looking back on it now. I didn't know what that man wanted, or what he was doing there, or what would have happened if my dog wasn't there with me. There would have been no reason for him to go into that park by himself and come towards me like that. I shudder to think about it. I think if the man had made a move towards me, my dog would have attacked him. Here is a very creepy thing that happened to me. One winter I was pushing my limits and winter camping a lot, but I had this crazy tent with a fireplace. The limits part was just the fact that I was solo and pretty remote in these places. This was rural SW Colorado Canyon country. There wasn't that much snow at all on the ground, but it was 0 degrees Fahrenheit that night. Well, it was a full moon and I was restless, so at about 2 a.m. I got out of my tent, fire still going, and went for a long walk. I ended up climbing up some stuff that was probably a quarter or half mile from my tent/vehicle, but up above it so I could see down on my tent and campsite clearly. It was really beautiful down there, dimly lit from the inside by the stove's fire and dimly lit from the outside by the big moon. I was enjoying myself and just about to head back down when I heard distant gravel crunching. I had been there since noon that day and not a single vehicle had driven past, so I was kind of put off and decided to stay up there until they drove past. The noise grows louder. Amazing how far away you can hear in the canyons at night. Slowly and eventually I can see that it is a car on the same road, so I stay put and watch. It's going really slow. I can see a lighter being used quite a bit. I'm not saying they were smoking meth, but they were smoking meth. And it's something like a '89 Caprice or something. Like the old cop cars, and really crappy. So I'm just watching, still in a very wistful mood and feeling somewhat powerful from my perch. They near the bend where they'll be able to see my tent and round the corner. Brake lights. They slow way down and seem to pause at my tent for an eternity. Probably only a minute or so, but now I was on high alert and pretty nerve-wracking. I had no kind of anything weapon-wise on me, just a hatchet down by the tent for firewood. But they drive on. I'm pretty relieved but still shaken, now thinking about what if they come back. So I decide to chill for a little longer and make sure I see them exit. Nope. They turned around down the road and came back. I watched as they parked a ways down the road and got out and started walking down the road towards my camp. It was such bright moonlight with slick rocks all around that I could see this all happening somewhat clearly, but I couldn't make out much more than the basic scenes, and there were still lots of big shadows. I proceed to watch for quite a while as they approach my tent, look all around the outside, look in the vents, where it probably looked like I was sleeping. The bag was in there with bedding, mess with my vehicle, and then walk back to their car and leave. I pretty much stayed up there until just before dawn and only came down when I knew I could break camp and bail. There were footprints in the snow on the outside of my tent, and I kept imagining what it would have been like to have just woken up and not known what happened, just see the footprints. After that I started carrying a spot locator beacon B, battery-powered motion detector alarm C, shotgun. And I started using a much smaller tent, and sometimes I even camp in a bivvy 20 or 30 feet away from my tent and just put my pack in the tent. This way if someone starts messing with the honeypot I have enough to get some awareness and do the right thing. TL, Doctor, potential serial murderers pass me by. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more real-life creepy encounters around the world. See you in the next video. Bye.